This shed contains 27,000 chickens. Scratching at the sawdust floor and flying feathers can create more dust than is normally acceptable in the workplace. The survey of 123 farms in the Hunter and 280 workers has shown that 14.3% suffer from chronic bronchitis and 11.4% have asthma. According to the Newcastle University lecturer who carried out the survey, this could be enough to put prospective workers off entering the industry.
Possibly for people contemplating joining the industry, then they should consider health when they're considering all the things that go to making a decision to buy into the industry. And perhaps if they already have respiratory disease or a history of allergies, then they might have to think twice.
The survey also showed that out of the workers questioned who contract to Australian poultry, only 19% always use a protective mask and 45% never wear one. And that's something that comes as a surprise to the company's broiler production manager.
Well, it is a concern to us if that report is correct, but we certainly advise our contract growers and service people that work in the sheds to wear protective dust masks on their face, and most of them do this.
Dr Brown says when sheds are closed up in winter, the dust problem increases. He has recorded dust readings up to 4 times the level deemed safe for general nuisance dust.
Jester Royale brilliantly won the Brambles Classic at Kembla Grange yesterday, giving her automatic qualification for the $2 million Golden Slipper Stakes.
Jester Royale in front. Regina Madre in second place, can't pick it up, and Jester Royale is going to win for Max Lees.
Owner John Hawkins originally paid the first entry fee for Jester Royale, but the second payment of $500 was 4 hours late and was returned. Now John has the agonising decision of paying the late fee of $75,000, and today he wanted time to think things over. Yesterday's jockey Ken Russell feels she's improved 3 or 4 lengths on her game second to Torres in the Coca-Cola Classic.
Going to win it easily by 2 lengths, Jester Royale, 5 lengths away.
From now, trainer Max Lees and owner John Hawkins have a few anxious hours ahead of them.
Observers following the course of the Ngluka trial were not expecting the jury to reach a quick decision. They'd sat through 12 days of hearings and a summing up, which only concluded this morning. Judge Payne drew a parallel between culpable driving and the charge of culpable navigation facing Ngluka skipper Dennis Warner. He asked the jury to consider, was the conduct of the accused as master of this vessel carrying 49 persons in the period leading up to it overturning in all circumstances proper? The jury retired to consider its verdict at about midday, adjourning an hour later for lunch. Then at 4 o'clock, the foreman presented a letter to the judge. After calling the jury back into court, the judge allowed them to take an overnight break from their deliberations. For the accused, Dennis Warner, and his family, the deferral only prolongs the uncertainty. Before allowing the jury to disperse, Judge Payne directed them, in his words, with all the force he could, to avoid discussing the matter with anyone overnight. The jury will reconvene at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
The alarm was raised just after midday and Talara firefighters arrived to find a large section of bushland well alight. Backup units from Maitland and East Maitland were called in as northerly winds threatened to fan the flames towards nearby houses. The thick smoke generated by the blaze set off alarms in the South Strait Special School and students were evacuated as a precaution. The fire was brought under control by 1:15, but it took another 3 hours to completely extinguish the flames. It's not yet known how the blaze began.
The upgrading of Williamtown Airport has become an integral part of the region's growth. A study completed by the Hunter Economic Development Council strongly recommends the federal government make up its mind quickly on what is to happen with the domestic terminal. The Chamber of Commerce and Newcastle and Port Stephens councils want the federal government to transfer control of the airport to local interests.
Williamtown at the present time doesn't operate to all points of Australia. There are some 380-odd thousand people go from the Hunter to Mascot every year to fly to different points of Australia. We're suggesting that Williamtown can be very cost-effective and a short-term solution to some of the congestion which is occurring at Mascot. We don't suggest that Williamtown is an alternative to the third runway or to Badgerys Creek, but it's certainly a short-term solution to remove some of the congestion which is presently at Mascot.
The Airport Task Force will meet with the Department of Defence and government officials within the next 3 weeks to discuss the matter. Although the issue of Williamtown Airport has been on the drawing board for many years, Scott Derwin is confident headway is being made.
We're probably talking within the next few months. We would like to try and come to some degree of finality with the discussions with the Department of Defence and Department of Transport and Communication.
Also today, the Chamber of Commerce announced it will discuss with Newcastle Council's Promotions Committee the possibility of bringing the Harbour Regatta, Matara, Surfest and maybe the Newcastle Show under the one umbrella. The Chamber believes sponsorship would be more forthcoming if the city was to host a festival similar to Melbourne's Moomba Festival. That meeting with Council will take place in 2 weeks.
The fire began at the rear of the workshop at 9 o'clock, but within minutes the building was engulfed. Flames licking paint and petrol set off explosions which hindered the firefighters. 2 hours later, there was nothing left. Unrecognisable was a BMW, which was at T&L Automotive Repairs to have some paint touched up. An $18,000 Holden was awaiting a polish.
Vintage Morris Miners, the man had just bought in. We've been searching for a Morris Miner everywhere. He's just finally found one and it's gone.
Today, Jerry Chew and his son John surveyed the remnants of the 15-year business, a few charred records.
You can't measure it. Parts, tools, small bolts, old things like grills and old parts, E.H. Holden parts. You could never buy new and you can't replace them now.
Police say arson was attempted at the workshop, which employs 5 workers, last November. They are treating last night's fire as suspicious. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
The state-of-the-art trains, similar to this one, will travel through Newcastle on daily services between Sydney and the north and northwest. Each will comprise 5 carriages, with the train being split at Werris Creek, where 2 carriages will continue on to Moree and the remaining 3 to Armidale. They'll have a maximum speed of 160 kilometres an hour, similar to the present XPTs, and the carriages will be air-conditioned with reclining seats. They are due to come into service next year. Another unit will operate between Sydney and Canberra. Broadmeadow train builder Ganninans had submitted a tender on a design for the new country passenger trains, but they will now be built in Victoria.
The positioning of the 43-ton bow section of the ANL vessel was an historic moment. But for those working on completing the vessel for its launch next month, it was a sad occasion. It was the last day for 17 workers. 20 tradesmen a week will go until the 400-strong workforce is pruned to 150. And it's a sad day for a group of Newcastle dignitaries who returned from a meeting in Canberra with Industry Minister Senator John Button.
The grim news, the disappointing news, was that the firms that had previously indicated to Senator Button that they were interested in acquiring the Carrick and Slipways yard have decided not to proceed further.
But shipbuilding may not be lost to Newcastle altogether. It's envisaged there would be interest in starting afresh at the yard, perhaps combining shipbuilding with general engineering to guarantee a continuous flow of work.
From federal government, there will be continuation of the shipbuilding bounty. In Carrick's case, they'd received some $50 million in federal government payments over the last 5 years. Tuesday's industry statement announced a widening of the depreciation provisions, making depreciation more attractive for the industry, an abolition of sales tax on components for vessels being built for export, and an exemption from import duty of imported components to be used in vessels for export.
Today, a parliamentary committee began an inquiry into shipbuilding, looking at export opportunities and a need for improvements to management. All this could spell new hope.
One can only feel deep sympathy for the people who a lifetime of work at Carrick and Slipways are losing their careers and losing their jobs. But what we've got to do now is to try to get that yard back in action and create job opportunities. And one would think, I would be pretty confident that with the skills they have, especially those with special skills, that they're going to be in demand later on.
Each morning, 16 prisoners go to work making steel farm gates in this shed at the back of St Heliers prison. Once they start work, they're under the control of staff from MI Steel. The last 3 weeks has been a trial period for the project, but in just 1 day, production targets were surpassed by 50%. It's hoped that within the next 5 years, the range of products made will be expanded and around 125 inmates given jobs.
The industry that's being established here at St Heliers is indicative of what can be achieved. The levels of productivity are outstanding. I think the job satisfaction as far as the inmates are concerned is also outstanding, and it probably provides the single best opportunity we have of allowing prisoners to go back to the community better and more productive people than when they came into the system in the first place.
The inmates are paid $60 a week for their labour. The rest of the money, which would normally be spent on wages, goes back into the prison system. St Heliers is just one of a number of private industry projects which could soon be seen in jails across the country.
We're certainly looking to a similar private sector operation at the sawmill at Glen Innes, at the minimum security institution there. We've called for expressions of interest in relation to a number of other institutions, including some of the maximum security institutions. And I would expect over the next couple of years that we will see a number of similar operations.
Troy was aboard Bronte Bay, and as they neared the home turn, Bronte Bay at the tail of the field staggered for a moment and then went down. Troy was in agony when ambulance and medical staff reached him, and he is now in Maitland Hospital where he has a suspected fractured leg. The horse Bronte Bay is okay. The main race of the day was the Australia Hotel Open Handicap over 1,300 metres, and a bolter from the Blues stole the money. We picked them up as they entered the Strait. And a great win for trainer Johnny Wade today. Chatham Road 43.40 and 6.10. Supperman 130, beat the charge 250. The trifecta $1,630.70 and the Quinella 67.50.
The ICI Contemporary Art Collection was assembled to document changing moods within Australian art over the late 80s. It's an exhibition by relatively young artists selected by the New South Wales Art Gallery and the National Gallery of Victoria. Some of the artists are already established names, others will benefit greatly from recognition at this level.
The collection was bought very specifically to two Aboriginal centres. It's been a great support for artists.
Among the works, a piece by Dale Frank, a hunter artist based in Scone. The collection contains some 40 works by 35 young Australians and was first assembled in the bicentennial year. Newcastle was high on the list of exhibition centres, but the earthquake-damaged art gallery was only recently reopened. Nevertheless, local art lovers will have plenty of time to enjoy this robust exhibition, which will remain on display for the next 6 weeks. The new Tingira Centre should be completed by late May, but interest in the Early Childhood Centre for 30 non-handicapped and 10 sensorily impaired children has been strong throughout the construction phase. Members of the New Lambton Lioness Club toured the site today. They have donated $2,000 towards the work. With them, 91-year-old Stan Graham of Sydney, a life member of the Royal New South Wales Institute for Deaf and Blind Children, who donated $1,000. The school is subtly different to other preschools. Guide railings will be installed around walls and a number of soundproof assessment rooms are also being constructed. Outside, the adjoining land will become a sensory garden for visually and hearing impaired children to explore. Preschool Director Joan Madison says the concept is one of giving children greater enjoyment of their surroundings.
Hope to turn them into children who can use their curiosity and discover things for themselves.
Although an enrolment date has not been set, it's expected the first preschoolers will attend before the end of the year.
Although Lifeline normally takes a low-profile role in the community, today was its chance to attract the onlookers. The caring organisation that offers telephone and face-to-face counselling to those in need was today supported by local schoolchildren. Gorican High School Concert Band, the Marching Girls and deaf children from Chertsey Public School. Catherine Greiner was also there to lend support to the group of more than 100 volunteers who assist more than 10,000 people each year, and numbers are growing as the economic climate worsens.
People in relationship crises, that's marital or family, people who are having a difficulty with grief and loss, people who are suicidal, people with sexual crises, all kinds of various socio-economic crises.
At the stroke of 3, it was 10 years to the second since the organisation answered its first call for help. Pigeons circled Gosford's Kibble Park as a symbol of those who have found release from their troubles thanks to Lifeline. Rebecca Skinner, NBN News.
Compass Industries is located next door to Carrington Slipway's fiberglass division, but unlike the shipbuilder which has run into financial difficulty, Compass Industries is flourishing. Sales of the fiberglass pools have increased in the last year by more than 30%, and the company has had to put on extra workers to meet the demand.
Traditionally, this is the time of year when we would have been seeing the end of the summer. Perhaps our staff levels were being reduced. Instead, we've had to put on some extra staff to cater for the load, and really that's the good story.
For the last 3 years, the company has been struggling. Wet summers have seen production slump. But this year, the story is very different. Its estimated turnover will exceed $10 million. And ironically, part of the reason is the recession. According to Ian Mewett, people are adding to their existing homes instead of buying that new car or holiday which they just can't afford.
Quite conceivable that you'd put a pool in your existing house and do something for the kids at home.
Also helping the company along is a new type of pool, which is almost as strong as those made from cement.
It's essentially still a fiberglass pool, but Kevlar, as most people would probably be aware, is a very tough fabric. We're used to seeing it in bulletproof vests or on the sail of 12-metre yachts. So by incorporating that cloth into the fabric of the pool, it makes high stress areas a lot stronger.